Thanks for tuning in to the HR Uprising podcast. I'm your host, Lucinda. The HR Uprising is focused on helping forward-thinking people professionals deliver real lasting value in their organisations. I'm a chartered psychologist, speaker and trainer, and recently authored the best-selling business book, How to Be a Change Superhero. My day job is founder and CEO of software and training business Actus. This gives me the opportunity to work with other businesses like yours. We are focused on building a better workplace for people wherever they are located, with the help of our performance, learning and talent management software and our training and consultancy services. Every week on the podcast, I will be covering different topics and challenges, joined by relevant experts and real-life people professionals. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoy and get value from this week's episode.
Welcome to this week's HR Uprising podcast, and it's our last episode before we take a summer break. And this week I'm talking to Chris J, and this is such an interesting topic, a really powerful topic. We're going to explore how we can, tap into the potential of disability in the workplace, and Chris is an expert on this. Chris, lovely to have you on the podcast. Would you like to talk a little bit about yourself and your organisation?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. So I am CEO of an organization called Bascule Disability Training, and a Bascule is a kind of bridge. Okay, and that's where the name comes from. We're a disability awareness training organization. So 67% of the British population feel uncomfortable talking to people with disabilities. So in my view, the drawbridge is up. My job is to bring it back down. And of course, if people are uncomfortable, then we don't get the best benefits of productivity. So what Bascule does is really around cultural change training, because it's about changing how we view disability in the workplace, looking at appropriate language, legislation, communication techniques, and things like that. Things to make disability seem less different, less weird, and really about fully integrating it. So I've been a disability awareness trainer for nearly the past 20 years. I'm a wheelchair user myself. You can't see it from this angle, but I was born with cerebral palsy, so I've had my disability all my life. And for me, I describe it a bit like it's almost like a religious calling. Okay, it's something that only I can do, is really talk authentically about disability. Bascule doesn't do anything else. It doesn't do race or LGBT or any other kind of training. We very much stick to what we can authentically deliver, and that really is training around disability and its benefits in the workplace.
And is that all kinds of disability, or as in sort of silent disabilities? What does that look like when you're talking to organisations?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because on the one hand, in most cases, there's a disability you can see. You can't see it at the moment, obviously, because you can only see my head. Wheelchair being the obvious one. But I also suffer with anxiety and depression, which in many ways is a hidden disability that has been more debilitating to me than my cerebral palsy has ever been. But when we're delivering training, it's pan disability. It's about all disabilities. And the reason we frame it like that is we can never train people to deal with every possible permutation of disability in the workplace, because everybody's different. Our job is to put something in that creates a culture where it's okay to talk about your needs, it's okay to talk about your differences. And what we generally find, there is obviously some discrimination, there is some ableism in the world, but my feeling very strongly is that it's ignorance in the truest sense of the word. People don't understand, they say dumb things, and then the situation escalates from there, and then HR comes involved, and then it sort of deteriorates. So I really want to go into this, and I always do, with a positive mindset. The more I know about what people need, and the more questions we can ask, and the more comfortable people are talking about how they would benefit from adjustment, the more everybody benefits.
If you're going in delivering training, I'm just trying to think who you'd be talking to in terms of, who's your target? Are you training the whole, everyone in an organisation, or are you talking to HR, or just people with the disabilities to speak up? Who would be the target trainees?
The target trainees, ironically, are those without disabilities.
Right.
And we're very strongly in the everybody should be trained. Many times I'll be asked to go and train the EDI team or something like that. And it's a bit like preaching to the converted. What you really want to do is talk to the people who have never had access to this training, maybe have some set views around what disability is, what it means. Because from a customer standing point of view, from a customer facing point of view, you could be interacting with anybody. And it doesn't matter if you have the best setup in the world. If your initial experience with someone at reception is one of, oh my God, I don't know what to do here, then that's going to sort of taint the rest of the experience.
I think that's an interesting point, because very often people want to do the right thing, but they feel a bit embarrassed or awkward, don't they, in terms of if confronted with a visible disability and people don't know how to react. And in those circumstances, they may not react well or make it uncomfortable. So it's about giving them the sort of the confidence or the tools or the language as to how to respond appropriately.
It is. And then on top of that, it's also showing grace for disabilities that you can't see, and understanding that actually, while someone may look fine to you, they may be struggling with complex hidden disabilities at the same time. So it's also about understanding and accepting that when someone tells you they have a disability, you have to believe them as well.
Right, and being open-minded to that, for sure. So if we look at this sort of, I can see the benefit of going in and educating in terms of educating people generally. It's going to benefit people outside of work as well. But if we talk about focus this on from a business point of view, do you find that businesses sometimes shy away from recruiting people with disabilities? Is that, you know, what do you think? What would you say to businesses in terms of accommodating people with disabilities, or, you know, making it attractive to employ people even, or positively?
Well, I think there's a negative stereotype that people with disabilities are of lower productivity, are generally problematic and a pain to deal with, and are less efficient. And according to gov.uk, only 35% of employers feel comfortable recruiting people with disabilities, which is, you know, really sad and really problematic. But research shows consistently that performance of employees with disabilities when reasonable adjustment is put in place is very comparable to those without disabilities. So part of it is really getting over this misconception that hiring disabled people is difficult or a pain.
I think people are sometimes nervous as well about the reasonable adjustments and that sort of thing. And there is actually support for that, isn't there? But some employers, that worries them of a financial overhead, or maybe they've got very small premises or something like that, which may make things difficult.
The average cost of a reasonable adjustment is £75.
Really?
So again, that is another misconception. Now, of course, some people do require more, and that is, in theory, why Access to Work exists, which, of course, is the government scheme to support people in work. Now, it's had a number of well-publicised problems of late around waiting times and a lack of funding. It ain't perfect, but nonetheless, these systems are in place to support employing people with disabilities. And most of the time, a reasonable adjustment isn't a thing. It's not a physical item. I mean, it can be. It can be an ergonomic chair if you've got a bad back, or a bigger monitor if you have a visual impairment or something. It can be a thing, but quite often it's a slight adjustment to working hours. It's something like that. Maybe starting slightly later, slightly earlier, putting them in a part of the building that is less noisy. There are so many little things that can be done that don't cost money.
So it's just about being open to things. So if we assume that actually employers do want to be inclusive, if we think about people with disabilities applying for roles, what puts them off? Or if you want to demonstrate yourself to be an inclusive employer, what should you be doing?
Well, you've really got to be open and honest about it. You've really got to say, look, Disabled people are very, very cynical. Okay. We've had numerous experiences where people say they're accessible and they ain't. Okay. I've been into numerous hotels where they've said, oh, yes, we have a wheelchair accessible room for you, Mr. J, and you can get all around our hotel. And you turn up there and there's no accessible room, and there's a bloody great set of stairs that they've completely ignored. So part of it is definitely overcoming the cynicism that disabled people have, which is part of it, and it's very understandable. But it's also about really showing that you really value people with disabilities. So what do I mean by that? I mean accessible web pages. When you're talking about recruitment, I'm talking about accessible forms. The number of times that we have nasty PDF forms, for example, that are not compatible with screen readers, and general things like that are really frustrating. There's a lack of case studies. I'm a big believer in case studies where if a business can show on a public facing website, hey, this is Chris. He has a disability and these are the reasonable adjustments we put in place for him. That's really powerful to show that they actually walk the walk that they say they're going to do. And it's those little things. It's also thinking about how the interview process lines up. Have you actually reached out to them in advance to say, hey, if you've got any reasonable adjustments, if there's anything we can do to make this interview slightly less stressful, then it's really helpful. So many times, this person with the disability has to take the proactive step of saying, hey, I'm going to need this, and this in order for this to work. And it's frustrating. The psychological difference of the business going out to you first and saying, hey, we're an inclusive organization. We'd love to help you. How can we help you perform at your best? And that really is everything I believe in, because you also have a ton of people within organizations who probably have disabilities that you don't know anything about.
Yes, that's a really interesting point. I like that thing about actually, modeling the inclusivity, because I imagine lots of people feel like they've got to hide it in order to be given a fair chance. So that speaks quite loudly, doesn't it? So talking about that, the way people in organisations with, there are probably lots of people in most organisations with disabilities, and maybe they've not even spoken about it. What's your recommendation to organisations in that place to make it safe for people to speak up and maybe get the support that they need, and for everyone to feel genuinely inclusive?
Well, I think first we have to look at the reasons why people typically choose not to disclose. There are sort of three big ones for me, and they all really boil down to fear. It's fear that they won't be believed. It's a fear that they'll be treated differently or viewed as a pain in the neck for, rocking the boat. And it's actually a fear of the impact it'll have on their career opportunities. There was a really interesting case, and I'm sure you will have heard about it too, about a man with autism who actually enforced at the tribunal that he wanted the tribunal outcome to be anonymized because he was afraid that if it was publicly acknowledged that he had autism, that would negatively affect his career prospects. And that is a horrifying indictment of how the industry currently works. Being neurodiverse should not in any way have a negative impact on you in the workplace. In fact, we know, and there's research to support, that different ways of thinking are great for enhancing innovation in organizations. Who wants a bunch of robots? But again, those are the kind of things that we're thinking about. And so when you see issues like that, this is primarily a cultural issue. Okay. Excuse me. It's a cultural issue, and it's where a shift in perception is required. I always talk about what I call the psychic problem, okay, which is businesses cannot put reasonable adjustment in for things they don't know exist because they're not psychic. So how do we change culture? Well, and this is ultimately self-serving as a disability awareness training organization, and I know this, but training is so important. And it has to engage staff at all levels, especially the C-suite, because we know that EDI positions tend to be fairly low down the totem pole, tend to have a fairly limited amount of influence. And even if it's more tied to HR, it's, oh God, those interfering people in HR, what are they up to now? What rubbish are they going to force me to sit through this time? We know that's the mindset of a lot of people working in businesses. So it's really important that disability awareness is moved away from an HR standpoint. It can get to an HR problem, but it shouldn't be an HR standpoint to begin with. It should be, this is about being an inclusive organization and productivity, productivity, productivity. From a cynical business standpoint, why do you want employees working at only 60 or 70% effectiveness? Because they're having to fight their reasonable adjustments. And I've had this argument with staff all the time. When I'm delivering training, I'll occasionally ask, has anybody got a disability in the room that they'd be happy to talk about? And somebody will put their hand up and say, oh, I'm dyslexic. And I'll say, thank you for sharing that. Does your line manager know? The response is invariably, oh God, no. And I'll ask them why. It's like, well, it doesn't really affect my ability to work. You know, in the words of Churchill, I can keep buggering on and that kind of thing. And I'm kind of like, but could you end the day a little bit less tired? Could you get that promotion that little bit quicker? Could you do your work in less time? If rather than just fighting your disability, you said, you know what, I'd really benefit from a screen reader or something like that. And for me, my favorite example of the work that Bascule has done, we trained an organization, we trained all of their staff, and they were a relatively small organization. I think I trained 40 people in person. This tells you how long ago it was because training's moved on so long since then. But the fact that I delivered that training, the company paid me, the company took it seriously, and everybody was taken off work to do this training. People disclosed their disabilities for the first time because they felt the organization were taking it seriously. And I think that for me is the thing. If you're shown to take it seriously, then people will talk about their disabilities.
Isn't it? So I'm just curious, actually. So if you go in and do training, how often is it in person now, or is it remote? And how do you deliver it? Because one of the powers, of course, it is very, very powerful for you to go in a wheelchair, you know, as someone with a disability, and actually have the human side to things, actually getting people to open up and disclose. But I presume there's other ways you deliver the content as well.
So obviously pre-pandemic, a lot of it was done in person, and that was very important to me because, as you point out, seeing the wheelchair is a very powerful thing. And you know, I've run businesses for the last 15 years. I've got experience across multiple sectors. So someone with a disability going in and talking about these things is powerful. During the pandemic, we did online. Um, which still is reasonably powerful, but we're very soon going to be launching our own e-learning training platform, which is going to be all video based and designed and delivered by me. So my argument for years is e-learning is rubbish. I don't like e-learning. I want to go and deliver in person. And I became like that guy trying to hold back the tide. I had to acknowledge where training was going. So my philosophy was, well, if it's rubbish, then make one that's not rubbish. So we've been working very hard behind the scenes, and in the next few months, we're going to be launching an introduction to disability awareness in the workplace that is designed and delivered by me with video, and it's not the kind of boring text-based one that people are used to seeing. And we're also building in a bunch of inclusion related options so that people with disabilities can also take part. I think that is going to be the path forward because it's the way that you can train potentially thousands of people.
Yeah, it's very scalable. And is it something, because obviously you're saying about a platform, but lots of organizations have got their own learning management platforms. Are you going to make the content available to organizations to sit on their platforms too?
Absolutely. So it's all what's called SCORM compatible. So it will all go on existing platforms, or you can join our platform. But we've got an introduction to disability awareness in the workplace, and we've got 2 modules on recruiting and retaining people with disability in the workplace that cover a lot of the topics that we've been talking about in more detail. And we're really excited about that.
What we'll do is, I mean, we'll talk for a couple more minutes, but if you'll provide me, Chris, with your links to that. So if anyone wants to know more about how to get this training, we'll put a link on the hruprising.com on the podcast episode page so that people can go to your website, Chris, when it's available. That would be a useful thing. So I guess just if you were to wave a magic wand, Chris, and look at workplaces today and say how you could change them for the workplace of tomorrow with regard to inclusivity around disability, and obviously maybe everyone's going to get everybody doing your training, might be one thing. Are there any other changes that you'd see people doing?
I think for me it would be look at the outcome of the work and not the process that gets the work done. And what I mean by that is I don't give a damn whether you're working from home on a throne or whether you're working at a desk in a traditional office. Look at the output of the work and say, okay, the end result is what I needed. And let's not get too fixated about how we got there. Beyond the obvious things around cultural change, which of course I'd love to see, that thing would really help and say, actually, we need the work done. How they do the work, if it's to a good standard, doesn't matter.
I mean, that is actually a really powerful way to end, because that should be the case regardless of whether someone's got a disability or not. In many ways, actually being outcome focused, managers talking to the person about the goal, what needs to be achieved, as opposed to micromanaging the way to it, is a really good thing to businesses to look at, right? Because whether you've got a disability or there's other things that go on, people might have caring responsibilities or other aspects. So actually being outcome focused is key, and particularly with hybrid workplaces, supervising the day-to-day, people being present for the sake of it doesn't make sense anymore. So I think that's a smart way to end. Chris, if people want to get hold of you, do you want to share your website and any other ways in which people could find out more about what you do?
Absolutely. So if you want to know more about us, please visit www.bascule.com or email info@bascule.com. And myself and one of my colleagues will be happy to talk to you about your needs.
Super. And you're on LinkedIn as well, aren't you?
I am.
Catch you there. And it's Bascule spelt Bascule. For those
That's
who are not
correct.
familiar with the word. Wonderful. So Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the HR Uprising podcast and seeing us into the summer. As we speak, it's very warm, so I'm feeling a little bit shiny on this video. You're looking cool, calm, and collected because you told me you've got your air conditioning there. So thanks so much for joining me this week.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I really hope you found this week's episode useful and enjoyable. If you did, perhaps you could recommend us to a friend or colleague, or give us a review on your platform of choice. It really helps new listeners to find us. Now you can access links to any of the information mentioned in this show via the website www.hruprising.com. Further free resources are also available at www.actus.co.uk. There you can also find out more about our software and training solutions. Finally, why not join our LinkedIn group, the HR Uprising, to share ideas and collaborate with other like-minded people professionals. Thank you for listening to the HR Uprising podcast.